Yeah, dude. Thanks for watching Digging Deep. We are working on a 2007 KTM 50SX. This is my son's new Christmas present. It's been a little dreadful going through Christmas. He was in the hospital, but needless to say, when he got out of the hospital later Christmas evening, he came home to a new to him dirt bike. What we're going to do in these videos is pull this thing apart. We're going to put fresh top end in it. Inspect everything. It's still got about 125 psi to 130 on the cylinder, so we could have ran this top end. And this, by far, was a dreaded, long learning process. When I say dreaded, that was just with the tweaks with the Delardo style carburetor. Basically, that carburetor is very finicky. I'm sure some of you might know, it's tuning into this video, that they just can be finicky. Especially when you do a port job. Warning, if you're going to port one of these, the Delardo carb might be an issue. Now I'm going to drop a link of a guy that I should be getting a kit in from that is for modifying the Delardo 19mm carb. I hope it works out because right now I have the VM 18 Mikuni on here from the older bikes. I did rig that up. I'll drop a picture right now. And basically, I was just having a nightmare with tuning the Delardo carb. I hope I'm saying that right. So we ended up putting the Mikuni on here and getting it pretty dialed in. Now it's making great power. I think the bike's still scaring him a little bit. But the big thing is, and the tricky thing is the clutch system, guys. Okay, so 100% make sure that you are getting those clutch springs in there 100% accurate to each one on all three of the clutch springs. That's one thing I found out the hard way. The shim washers that go on the top or the outer portion of the clutch come in different sizes. I found that out the hard way when I was trying to make the clutch a little bit more aggressive, and yeah, hours upon hours, and tearing this clutch system apart about 30 times. I'm kidding. A good many times. But without further ado, guys, we're going to get into tearing this thing apart, freshen up the top end. I did port this thing out, just a mild port job on this thing, just a little stage 1, polish the exhaust up. It's making pretty good power. It hauls me down the road screaming. So, you know, it was a little frustrating with the clutch system, but I'm learning about it. I think I'll have it down packed. This clutch is a lot more friendlier to access than his 01, that's for sure. I can probably get in there and have this clutch off in about 5 minutes. So anyhow, guys, stick around to the end of the video for some tips and tricks, and I'll show you all the stuff that came with this bike. It was a great deal. It was a steal. We got a bunch of stuff with this bike for a pretty good price. Alright guys, there she is. He's really liking it already. He ran it a couple times. That's why you see some mud up under the tail fender and stuff there. But it's clean enough for me to tear it down and start working on this thing. It was definitely race, guys, and that's probably why there's all these spare parts. The only thing I had to do, it was running when I bought it. The only thing I had to do is put the ignition coil in there, and thankfully we had one with all the parts that came with it. It's pretty remarkable the deal we got with, you know, with this thing. So this definitely makes more power than the older one he had, 100%. It's the liquid cooled 50cc. I would have to say there's a few horsepower difference. I don't know right off the top of my head, but that old air cooled Monrelli, I think, whatever you call it, that Italian engine, he definitely didn't have the power of this bike, and you can tell right off the back. But we're gonna get this thing apart, freshen it up, freshen up the top end. Like I say, I think the top end that's in it is pretty good. But while we're in there, I already have one on the shelf. I've had one on the shelf for some time that was accidentally purchased back here. and we'll throw that on. I do got some base gaskets that I'm going to swap around. We're going to try to tighten that squish band up. I know these bikes are supposed to be decked and had that KTM has a decking tool, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to check our squish and try to tighten it up, and hopefully we can get the smaller base gasket on here, but we'll see how all that works out. This is the first time for me working on one of these liquid cooled bikes. I'm sure they're just like any other two-stroke dirt bike. But I'm excited for him, and he's been watching videos of other guys with the same bikes or even newer ones non-stop, and he's really pumped to get out there. So here's the top end kit I'm throwing in it, guys. I got everything laid out here. This is probably where I'm going to throw the engine down. I'll have to clean all this up. Wasco piston and KTM 50SX LC, which I think stands for liquid cooled 01 to 08 / mini adventure 02 to 08. So I was questioning whether or not this would fit at first, but I do think we should be good there, guys. So with this kit here, which is for what I believe is the mini adventure, I think those, oops, we got stuff falling out here. I think that base gasket looks the same, so we'll just have to see when we get in there. But this does have two different size base gaskets, so we could probably tighten up the squish that way. And I'm going to take, I know it's a dome piston, but I'm going to take just a hair bit off of his head too, and maybe just a few thousand. It's not going to take much. It's a dome piston, so to do it properly, we'd want to have that machine. But yeah, this is just a small fraction of the stuff we got with this bike. It's crazy. 2 or 3 different ignition coils it had, two or three stators. It's crazy, guys. I'll show you guys at the end of the video of all the parts that come with it. It was one hell of a deal we got picking this thing up. Alright, guys, we got the whole helper down here today. Get this in here. Alright, there she is on the bench here, guys. So everything looks pretty decent. We did have a bracket back here that was welded up before, but everything looks pretty decent with the weld. Decent penetration. Not the prettiest weld in the world, but it works. So we're going to get into tearing the top end off of this thing, right, buddy? Guys, so we've had a few problems since I left off. As you can see, we got a tap and die set out here. These cylinder bolts were pain in the ass, galled up. Head bolts were galled up. I had to run taps down those, clean those all up. This cylinder, now I don't know why they would do this. Right here, where this bolt goes here, which would which would be that side on the water pump side, I had to grind down a little bit.
And I got to where I was telling myself I don't want to take too much material from there. I know you can't see that great. So then I had to grind a wrench so I could get in there. So that wasn't that big of a deal. We figured that out. And then the head bolts were the one inner one. Then this is where it was leaking too, right in the area. So I was wondering, maybe that was why it was leaking. But anyhow, needless to say, we did skip a couple pages here, and I apologize. We got the lower half, or the bottom end, cleaned up really well. All that carbon that was off the front cleaned up. I thought about maybe even pulling this off and painting his case. We'll see if we go that far. I definitely wanted to bring you guys along a little better than what I am right now, and I do apologize. I just kept hitting all kinds of snags along the way. So I just brought you guys in for an update. We're gonna start cleaning the cylinder head. I did take a little bit off the cylinder head, not much, just on my glass with some sandpaper. If I were to guess, it would just be a few thousandths of an inch I might have took off. I'm not going to go crazy because we do have a domed piston. So I definitely want to watch myself there. Like I said earlier in the video, I do believe we do have 2 different base gasket thicknesses. And then I do have even a spare base gasket there. So I should be able to make something work to get the clearance I'm looking for the squish clearance. Again, I know KTM has the decking tool, but we're just gonna go. We're just gonna go off of running the squish on this thing. So we're gonna start tearing into putting this thing together and getting this all cleaned up, and then we're gonna check our clearance on a ring gap and make sure everything's good there. All right. Take a look at the cylinder here. Pretty interesting design. Not sure how well you guys can see that. Turned out pretty good. Now all I did was barely work at that exhaust roof, and then on the sides, on the walls, on the exhaust a little bit, and that was like with 320 grit on a mandrel. I didn't really cut anything with a burr, and then I went a little bit more aggressive on the chamfer on the exhaust roof. So it might have just barely changed the exhaust roof and side of the exhaust ever so slightly, guys. So everything's looking pretty good. I need to get it cleaned up. We're going to take it upstairs, and I'm going to rinse it in some Dawn dish soap and clean everything up real good. And we're going to look at probably start putting this engine back together and pull a squish. I'm shooting for the smaller base gasket to see if we can get a tighter squish. And if it seems a little too tight, we're going to jump up to the green base gasket, which I would guess is around 20 thousandths or so. But there's a look at the transfers. I mean, they were pretty much beautiful. With this KTM cylinder, I ain't gonna lie, they were very there was just like in the corners and stuff, just minor casting flaws. I cleaned up the boost port there, and everything's looking really good, guys. We'll go upstairs and get this thing cleaned up, and we're gonna come down here and start assembling this engine. The old piston, weighing in at 56.90 grams, and the Wasco piston 56.34. So we have a lighter piston. They are a little bit different, judging by the inside now that I look at it. And this would be a Vertex piston, pretty similar. The Wasco piston is lighter. We're looking for 6 thousandths on an 1.5 bore cylinder. Minimum. Alright, buddy. That's looking pretty good. Junior really wants to show off his exhaust port, don't you, bud? Looks pretty good. So, it did come with 2 different base gaskets. I want to say the green's probably 20 thousandths. And after putting my hand on it here, I'm not sure. This may feel a little thinner. So this is like a 9 thousandths base gasket here. I thought it felt thinner. What do you think this one is, buddy?
Maybe 10.
And this one, the white one, is a 17 thousandths base gasket. And we had one in this Tusk kit I got for the O-rings for the head. I think we got plenty of base gasket options for tightening our squish. That's 19 thousandths. So green 19 thousandths. The gray one with that one is 18 thousandths. And then this is the thinnest, which is 11 thousandths. We're going to try this first, buddy. That'll really tighten up the squish band.
That was my favorite color one, too.
Is it? Alright, so I think we're going to try our thinnest base gasket first and run with it. If it appears to be too tight of a squish, or if it's too tight of a clearance for it to even, I've been there before, for it to roll the engine over all the way without hitting. We'll just pull the whole cylinder without removing the head then on the bench here. Just get a little bit on the piston here. I don't go crazy. Just a very light coat. I don't slobber them. I've seen people go really crazy on it. Some people slap them on dry. So there is the pin in the piston we want to squish to. And that looks about in a decent spot as any. We'll see how tedious this is going to be. Lather this bad boy up with grease. Some people glue these down, which I'm not a big fan of. This one's definitely more on the thin side. And a lot of times when we get to this point, we'll be able to see what the deck height looks like, buddy. Yes. I have a feeling we might have to put this up. See what this thing looks like, bud. I don't know, we might be alright. We will torque this thing down and see what happens. Junior and I's taking bets if it makes contact. I'm betting contact, he's betting no contact. This might have some really good tight squish here, buddy. This might end up being right where you want it. Alright guys, so we're going to jump on the phone here and look up our torque specs on this. I wouldn't imagine it'd be nothing too crazy on a small bore like this, a small engine like this. And just make sure our squish clearance isn't too tight. We are cranking over. Junior won the bet. He said that it would be fine, and I thought it was going to be too tight. I set the cylinder on there without the gaskets or O-rings on there, and it was making contact. So our squish is going to be pretty tight, I would say. But all right, guys. So I went ahead and torqued these down to 15 Newton meters. Which should be just a hair over 11 foot-pounds, if that helps anybody. And I'm really thinking Junior won the bet on the squish test because I think we're getting just a hair too tight, guys, for my liking. I wanted to be down around 20 thousandths plus
22 was like my minimum, guys. We got 17,000, so that's definitely too tight. So I'm gonna just try removing just the whole cylinder and leaving the cylinder head on there. That's what I had in mind anyway. So we're gonna go ahead and do that for you guys off camera and swap the base gasket out here, which would be the next smallest one, which I think was this one. This one's 17 thousandths. All right, guys, we went from the 10 thousandths base gasket to the 16 and a half, 17 thousandths. So about 7 thousandths difference should show up here on my squish reading, which should put us in the ballpark of probably around 26 thousandths, which would be money. All right, guys, so the solder I'm using is about 65 thousandths solder. Wondering, let's see where we're at now, guys. 22 thousandths, 21.5. It's still a little tight. I think we're going to send that on a little bit of the tighter side. We got a 21 thousandths for squish. You know, some people were probably a little afraid of that on these little high revers, but I think that should be pretty good, and that should boost his compression up. So we're going to run it and see what happens, guys. There's only one way to find out. I bet he's going to have some pretty good compression on this thing. So I'm going to double check myself one more time on the squish here, guys. It's easier on these small bores. So I'm showing about 22, 23 thousandths. So we're just going to go with 22 thousandths, guys. We'll take that all day long. We're looking for some more power. I did slightly take this exhaust roof up. You probably wouldn't even be able to see it, guys, on the degree wheel. I just took a few thousandths off the exhaust roof and just maybe a few thousandths on the width of the exhaust. So obviously I've never had any engines like this on the channel, and I've never made a pressure test kit for this thing. So I'm going to come up with something, guys. I'm going to try to put a pressure test up against this engine while we have it off here, off the bike. Not that it's that hard on the bike doing the job, but it's going to be much easier when it's off the bike, guys. So we're just going to make sure this thing's sealed tight, and what we're going to look for is a 7 psi on positive and negative pressure on this engine.
All right, guys, try not to laugh here. This is my pressure tester. Got her on the Mighty Vac at 7 psi. And we'll pull a negative pressure on it in just a minute here, guys, but we are pressure tight here. Whatever works.
It's been well over 7 minutes, so we're going to tear this pressure vac device off.
flicking dirt now. Oh gosh, what a freaking nightmare this was. She's still smoking a little bit, probably a bit rich. But yeah, we finally got her. There you go, bud. Alright guys, dropping this bonus clip in here. If you would happen to decide you want to port it, this bike is definitely making a little bit more power, I can tell. Definitely some awesome throttle response. And all I did was a good cleanup in there, and maybe took just a few thousandths off the exhaust roof and widened the exhaust. And when I say a few thousandths, just barely any. I know it wouldn't have changed any of the timing numbers. But anyhow, so I'm running the VM18 with this thing ported, and it's tuning so much easier. We're still a little fat on the smoke ring there. I marked the plugs. I don't get them mixed up because I got a couple plugs, but we're getting the bike close, but that's still a little rich. And I had a soldered main jet in there, and that one calibrated out. Well, now what I do when I say calibrated out, I like to get the machinist bits. I have them out on my car bench in the other shop. And I went out there and I matched it up, and it matches identically to a 70. Maybe just a little bit sloppier. So if anything, I would have guessed it would be around the 72 main I was running. We're jumping down to a 65. I didn't like where the 60, how far down the 60 went down the drill bits. That's how I kind of calibrate these Chinese jets. I just double check myself, and I like getting those bits out and just making sure they didn't, mess up. And that's one way to gauge the hole diameter. So we're going down to a 65. So this is running a 65 main jet in it. And I have a modified float to where I could drop the needle lower a little bit. There was plenty of material. I took this out. And guys, I'll make a further video on more depth in this. I just, in case somebody comes across this and has the idea of doing so. But yeah, so I modified the float. I took a little material to let the needle go down further. And keep in mind, guys, I am running the needle out of the original Italian Dell'Orto carb, which is interesting. The bike responded really well, so I just tried it. We'll see what happens with this this kit that comes in for the Dell'Orto carb, but it was just so hard to tune. I could not get the bike to idle. It would not idle at all, and every time I wanted to go richer on the idle jet because it went lean after porting, it just wouldn't. I kept going back and forth, and I just could not get there no matter what I did. I had my needle and I had my main jet pretty much dialed in on the bike. However, I just could not get the bike to idle. Now what's interesting with the Six Sigma racing kit that I'm getting off eBay is a whole kit supposed to come with pictures and everything, kind of like JD jetting, I guess. And pretty much it's supposed to be some altercations with the Dell'Orto carb 19 millimeter with shimming the slide, which I already figured out I had to do with the needle I had because I didn't have any other needles. So I was shimming the slide to make it more rich, obviously, because that would raise the needle. And then apparently there's a slide hold mod with this kit, an idle mixture mod, and it comes with step-by-step instructions. And I think there was like an exhaust mod or something on there, but the whole thing of it is, if you modify or polish or modify the intake, it says in the instructions that you will have to alter the carb to get it running right. So I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to try it out. So I'll let you know. We'll have another video come out on the carburetor status and tuning. But the Mikuni VM18, I had to rig it up to get on this bike properly, and we'll post pictures. I just pretty much, it has the clamp style front, kind of like the PW50s and stuff that clamps on, and I pretty much had to rig that up to make it work. But anyhow, just a little fat yet, and I think a 65 main, and the unusual, a little bit lower than the Delarto. I think it was around a 38 Pilot. The Pilot's pretty good, I think, so we're going to leave that alone. We'll probably run the bike some more here, but we'll have another video coming out on just the whole VM18 versus Delarto with engine porting on this bike. Look at this, guys. So yeah, obviously it come with the stand. It should, for the most part, come with that. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff. That was the Vertex piston I pulled out of this thing. We're going to keep that because it could be slammed back in if we had to. But that car did not come with it. This was the Delarto that was on it. It came with all kinds of washer stacks. So we got spare radiators, 2 spare stators. Both of these ohm out. They're good stators. A spare coil. All kinds of stuff. There's 2 of these. I'll take you in the room back here with all of his other stuff. I mean, there's the spare coil. We got spare KTM clutches down here. Sprockets. There's more sprockets back there in the other room. All kinds of stuff, guys. We got the dreaded kicker gear that goes out on these. Brand new one from KTM in here. All kinds of stuff. I just couldn't believe this deal. And it was actually on Facebook Marketplace for some time. Flywheel rotor, just spare front sprockets, reeds, all kinds of stuff. It was like, wow, like I couldn't believe someone didn't hop on this thing. Now obviously it needed a little TLC, and it still does. We've got a little bit of play in the wheel bearings and such, but we'll fix that up. But yeah, it was quite the package deal. So let's go back here and I'll show you all the other stuff. Don't mind the mess, guys. Yeah, but they come with the service manuals. A lot of this is junk I haven't really went through too much, but there is some extra spare stuff. Some of this was for various makes and models. There's a shock guard and an extra air filter cover, the springs. It came with a spare shock. A lot of this is just odds and ends stuff, but it come with all that stuff, guys. And extra intake boot. We'll put that in the other box. Right here is a brake caliber. I just couldn't believe it, you know. I was like, I couldn't believe that somebody didn't jump on this any sooner. Alright, so we had spare wheel, spare bars. It looks like the stock bars. Several sets of plastics. I know the plastics don't cost a whole lot for these bikes, guys, but throttle cables. I mean, brand new ones. Brand new throttle cables here. Spare wheels. A spare set of forks. I haven't examined them too much to see if there's anything wrong or see if they were bending or anything. Obviously, they were taken off a bike for a reason, but still, guys, spare pipes. An extra helmet. It actually had another helmet and another chest protector I hooked my little cousin up with, and just all these plastics and stuff like that. It was just one hell of a deal. A brand new gas tank. I've done pulled out of the plastic back there. So yeah, guys. So I mean, it was a really good steal. I know these clutches on these bikes can be a pain in the ass, but I think as long as you keep these spring rosters cleaned out, from the way I understand, and again, make sure when you're doing your washer stacks, guys, you measure them, and they cannot be off. They have to be 100%, all 3 stacks, exactly the same measurement on your caliber. You want them things within 1,000th tolerance. Yeah, and I found out the hard way of having them a few thousandths difference, and one clutch pad was grabbing and the other 2 weren't. Well, one was grabbing first and the other 2 were grabbing later, and then the clutch was slipping and acting all funky, and it was driving me nuts. And then later had found that out after doing further research and doing some closer examination when I was miking the springs, and then I figured it out and said this is definitely what it is. So guys, if you're going to port this bike, be ready to do some tuning. This carburetor on this bike, on the Dell'Orto 19mm, it want lean on the idle and want rich on the main, and that happens a lot of times when you port a bike, so be prepared. I will let you guys know in a further video what this kit does. There's a guy I found that there's some modifications you do to the 19mm Dell'Orto, and I'm sure I'm going to make a video on that for you guys and let you know how that makes out. I thought about getting his Mikuni board because it's an 18mm, but the power that thing's putting down and how easy it was to tune compared to the Dell'Orto, we might end up sticking with it. So, alright guys, well, thanks for watching Digging Deep. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. I'm sorry that this video probably wasn't put together as good as I'd like to. It was just a real pain in the ass, guys, working with this thing. But thanks for watching Digging Deep. If you haven't already, give us a subscribe, like, and comment, and turn on the bell notifications, and we'll catch you next time, guys.